So, hello and welcome to Sliding Doors podcast, episode 2. Thank you for kind of everyone who's got involved with the podcast so far in terms of sharing, liking, commenting, etc. I know I've been bombarding you all, so thank you for kind of interacting with it. Hope you enjoyed the first episode, and on to episode 2. So today we are with the lovely Daisy Roach. Me and Daisy have known each other. We're talking kind of off camera there for about 8 years or so. Not
about that, yeah.
Not as in touch as maybe as we are in terms of kind of where the world goes now and keeping in touch via social media and stuff. But yeah, welcome Daisy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So thank you for coming on. Like we kind of touched on there. So it's been about 8 years since we've kind of first met each other. And for those that kind of still don't know myself or Daisy, we met at Primark in Bristol, where I was a department manager, and Daisy, is that where you were working in HR at the time?
Yeah, I was for my sins in HR. Sorry, I do have a caveat, and that is as soon as I get on Zoom, my cats decide that everyone's actually here to see them and not me. So just in case they decide to pop up, that is my caveat.
That, and I'm sure our viewers will love that. You can kind of see behind me my daughter there and my son. Normally, if my daughter kind of just popping in, again, she feels very similar. Wants to kind of see everyone, see who I'm talking to. So pretty much everyone I've been on a call with in the last 18 months or so has met her, because she just pops up in the corner. So, just a bit of kind of context for everyone. What are you up to now? What happened kind of post Primark?
So I'm currently head of HR / people lead for Better Food, which is an organic, local and ethical supermarket, essentially.
Okay.
So we have currently got 3 stores in Bristol, just about to open our 4th. We have a 5th store lined up for next year, and we're just about to be everywhere. So that's what I do now currently.
That sounds really cool. Is that kind of dotted around Bristol for those that aren't kind of aware, and obviously maybe a bit further out? Where in Bristol are they, and what can we check them out?
Yeah, so we've got a flagship store in St Werburgh's with Scrap Store, so we're in the same building. And then we also have one up in Clifton on White Ladies Road, and then one on the harbour side right by the M Shed in Wapping Wharf. So, and then store 4 is, fingers crossed, opening on the 4th of November, and that one will be on Gloucester Road. So yeah. Exciting.
Prime locations for Bristol, for those that aren't aware, that they are pretty much kind of cornerstones of Bristol, if aren't they, in terms of, I don't think you pick much better locations so far, so that's really good.
Yeah, they're pretty much the sides of the centre that you want to be on, really. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's get straight into it in terms of sliding doors and kind of those moments. Obviously, topic 1. Let's kind of talk about kind of love and relationships. Has there ever been any kind of what if moments for you? Any sliding door moments there for you?
I think every moment is a what if moment. Like, we have a choice in everything that we do, and then we can look back and say, well, what if? Even if it's not a choice, something that's happened. I think you could say that about literally anything that's happened in life. I mean, I guess the last time that we probably spoke properly and knew each other, then you would have known me with my ex at the time, and we were together for about 6 years at one point. Right. and then we actually split up in 2015. So that was 6 years ago now, just over 6 years. And it's just been a bit of an exploration since then, really. And I think that's probably my what if moment, is because we met when I was really young. I was 17 when we met and got together, and then I was nearly 24 when we broke up. So that was like the majority of like my late teens, early 20s spent with one person. And since then it's been kind of like, well, actually, who am I and what do I want? And I guess my kind of sliding door moment, if we're gonna have to pick one, would probably be, well, what if I hadn't devoted so much of my, you know, late teens, early 20s to one person, and kind of, you know, had a bit more fun, I guess. And not even in the sense of like going out and meeting different people, but, you know, we'd been together for a long time, we lived together, it was, you know, a bubble, rather than kind of, you know, like going out with friends and, you know, being social and spending time learning who you are on your own. And I think that's really important. I think a lot of people, especially over the last 18 months, have started to realize, well, who am I when I'm on my own? Like, who actually am I, and what's important to me? And I think that's something that can very easily get sort of forgotten about, or just pushed on the back burner and things like that, because of the way that we live our lives and social media and you know, the friendships that we make and relationships that we have, especially at such formative age. It's yeah, I think I feel like I'm rambling now.
No, that's what you've touched on exactly what I was going to highlight there, I guess, in terms of that's very formative years, isn't it? In terms of that long-term relationship was over a period where, you're right, a lot of people do probably have different experiences at that age, in terms of it's not as long-term, it's not as kind of sustainable for a lot of people at that stage. What do you kind of think, you know, like you say, your what if moment is that, you know, what would have happened had you not been doing that, but what do you think kind of made it kind of work at that age for you, in terms of, you know, compared to maybe others it doesn't work for at that age? So certainly from my point of view, you know, I got with my wife quite late in terms of that, so that kind of period I was probably having a different experience at that age, and then, you know, kind of you know, met my wife when I was around 28, so, you know, I was past my formative years at that stage. You know, even being a man, you know, we tend to have our formative years a little bit longer than others. But yeah, in terms of kind of what do you think kind of kept you going in kind of comparison to maybe others at that stage?
I don't know. Is the honest answer. I don't really know. Obviously, you know, at the point where you're there's cat number one. Point, you know, when you're 17 and then you break up with someone when you're nearly 24, that is essentially a third of your life at that point, and you've spent a third of your life with somebody. Whereas now we've been apart for 6 years, it feels like it was a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
So I can't remember how it felt then, when it was comparatively a much longer period of my life than it is now. So, because I'm 28 now, so nearly 29. Have I got my timings right? Maybe I haven't got my timings right. I don't know. Anyway, so it's yeah, it's just a bit of a strange one. I don't know why it worked at the time. Obviously, it didn't work forever. But what does? Do you know what I mean? I don't, you know, necessarily believe that there's like one person and that's the person you spend your life with. And I think the main thing that I've learned now is that it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship for it to be a supportive, healthy, emotional relationship. You know, I live with my best friend, and, you know, we describe each other as our platonic soulmates, because actually our relationship with each other in this context of our friendship is the healthiest relationship I've ever had, and it doesn't have to be a romantic one.
Yeah, that's really good, isn't it? And like you say, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there that will relate to that, in terms of kind of like we touched on at the beginning, in terms of kind of some of those experiences people have had in the last 18 months. I think, you know, you'll have been in a very kind of lucky situation in kind of having someone throughout that period that you do connect with on that level, because, you know, I've seen, and I'm sure you'll have seen it from a HR point of view, people haven't had that same experience, you know, people that have been a little bit isolated and stuff like that, and, you know, have certainly had a different experience in the last 18 months. and again, different to my experience, obviously having kids and homeschooling and all those bits and pieces that have come out of the pandemic. So no, that's been really interesting. Just one kind of final question on that, I guess. How did you find kind of working together in terms of and being together? Because obviously I assume that you were together kind of pre Primark, is that correct?
Yeah. So no, I don't think we were actually. I think we met at Primark. And then we stayed together for a couple of years after I left, and they stayed for quite a while, and then we split up just after I finished uni actually. But again, they were a bit older than me too, so they were sort of starting their career, finding their feet post uni when I was just about to start uni. So it was kind of, a bit of a life difference, I guess. And I think you do go through quite a big, I know so many couples that have split up when one of them finished uni and the other one hasn't, or the other one didn't go to uni or whatever, because it becomes such a big life change that actually it grows in a separate direction. And that's why I think learning who you are on your own, that's that important bit that people start to realize. Like, if people go to uni, leaving uni is one of those triggers that can kind of say, who am I on my own? And there are lots of different triggers for them.
So I never went to uni, but I've always assumed that like you say, it is a big life kind of change. It is a big kind of crossroads almost, isn't it? Because you're certainly from the outside in anyway, it looks like you're part of things. You're with the people you're studying your course with. You're, like you say, that identity piece is kind of merged for a while, where you're all doing this thing, you're all going out, you're all doing certain things on a kind of a regular basis, and then like you say, you kind of finish that, and then you have to establish yourself again, don't you? You almost have to kind of, like you say, find you, because now it's, I've done the course, I'm back out in the big bad world, and now I need to kind of find me again. Like, and I totally get that in terms of how that can kind of the ripple effect it can have into kind of relationships and stuff like that. No, I absolutely get that. So yeah, on to kind of topic two, and this probably flows quite nicely, I'm guessing, from and correct me if I'm wrong, but did you kind of study HR, or was it kind of so obviously topic two is all around kind of work and career. So have you got any kind of what if moments in terms of any regrets going into HR?
I think I always say to people that HR is never something you decide you want to be when you're younger. You end up falling into it. And I know that's very much true for yourself, going from being a retail manager and then finding your way into HR, because you do a lot of HR as a retail manager anyway. And all of my friends who also work in HR, which I have quite a few, it's all the same. It's all very much like, okay, so what next, and what am I doing next? And that's kind of ended up kind of falling into HR. So I started working at Primark when I was 16. A couple of months later, they're like, you're good, you're quite boxy, we'll make you a supervisor. I was like, great, cool. I was a supervisor for a few months, down on good old department 6 in menswear. And then they were like, you're quite good, you're quite bossy, we'll put you in HR. So I just turned 17 when they stuck me in HR, and I did that part-time, 2.5 days a week, until I finished my A-levels. And I guess, so my original plan is that I had a place to go to Warwick University to study American literature.
Okay.
And I didn't end up getting in because I had an issue with one of my A-level papers that was misgraded. But by the time they'd done the remark and I'd got the upgraded grade, I'd already lost that place. So I ended up having to take a year out because I'd lost my place and I didn't want to go into clearing. And during that year, I worked full-time at Primark doing HR. And it was during that year that I kind of was like, I actually quite like doing this. I'm quite good at it. what am I going to do with an American literature degree? What am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
Teach? I don't like children. So, and that's when I pulled my application. So I'd reapplied, I pulled my application and reapplied instead for UE to do HR. I was like, I know it, I'm good at it. Let's get the piece of paper to help get me in some doors to go a bit further. And yeah, the rest is kind of history. So,
and then
really,
from kind of doing the university course and kind of being obviously in HR in Primark, so what does that journey look like in terms of kind of where you are from a HR kind of role now?
So I left Primark in my second year of university. So I'd been at Primark for 5 years, I think, at that point. I went to work for House of Fraser as their lead HR for the Bristol store, which was really good. And it just showed me a completely different way of working. You know, I'm sure you'll remember Primark. It's like, right, this person was 1 minute late 3 times over the last 6 months. Let's give them a disciplinary. Whereas at House of Fraser, it's very much more like, if we treat people like adults, hopefully they'll behave like adults. And if we don't try and micromanage everything, hopefully it'll be all right. And it is, and that is a much easier and time efficient way to manage people. So I did that for about 18 months. They relocated me to London when I graduated. And then Primark came knocking again. Okay. Because they needed HR manager for one of their stores in London, offered me double my salary that I was getting at House of Fraser. So I went back and I only stuck it out for about 6 months. I decided it felt too much like a step back. It felt like I'm here all over again, doing the same things, but just getting paid more money to do it. And I just didn't think it was worth it. Because again, you'll remember the working hours are so long. It's like a solid 10-hour day.
Yeah.
And I was just like, do you know what? This isn't really what I want to do. This feels like a step back, not a step forward.
And you're right. So to add a bit of context, I guess, as a manager at Primark, it's a big machine. It does, everybody goes there. It turns over a lot of money. I'm sure it turns over even more money now than it did when I was there. But it was long hours from a management point of view. It was, like you kind of touched on, there was an element of micromanaging in terms of kind of disciplinaries, return to works. From a retail manager's point of view, great from my point of view, because obviously that kind of sparked that change of career. But to your average Joe manager, being involved in kind of the people side wasn't obviously their kind of gig. And there were a couple of times where I almost went back. So couple of mainly because of the salary, in terms of what was on offer. You take the odd call, you go, oh, we'd be interested in you coming back as a senior DM. Okay, let's have a conversation. It's not what I want to do, but money wise it makes sense. So I almost went back then. When I transitioned into HR, I was like, did it for a bit, wasn't really sure it was for me at first, and I was like, again, they came knocking, and it was like, we've got this opportunity, would you be interested? But it would have been a step back, going back in as a DM at the time. And again, it was a decision, a conversation based on money, because going from high level manager to HR and starting again obviously wasn't conductive with kind of good money. So, you take the conversation, but then, like you say, that gut feeling of, this isn't right, this doesn't feel right kind of going forward. And it was that, ironically, it kind of did spark that people bit for me. And the name of the lady escapes me, but yourself and I can't remember.
Vicky?
Potentially,
Vicky?
yeah. certainly kind of supporting you guys with some of the people stuff, getting involved in that meant I didn't have to be on the floor as much. Happy days. So then, and then, the more you do it, the more it sparks your interest. Actually, I like people more than I like sales. I like people more than I like, doing things visually, or, doing displays, all the other kind of things that were associated with our job role at Primark. It really, it's kind of sparked that people side, and then led me to do my CIPD, where I am now, etc. So I can only be thankful to them in that sense, but it wouldn't be necessarily an experience I would long to repeat.
I think that's it. And I mean, if it works for some people, obviously, which is great. It didn't particularly work for me, purely because I have chronic health conditions, and it was too much, really, and it wasn't worth the money in the end. Thought it was, that's why I went back. But they pay you well, but it's a hard job.
They pay you for what they expect, don't they?
Job.
And there's a lot of this around with like Lidl and Aldi as well. They pay fantastically. I know people that work for them. They pay fantastically well, but they want the level of work that goes alongside that. It's not, we're going to pay you really well and then it's Monday to Friday 9 to 5, is it? It's, like we kind of touched on, it's the longer hours, it's every hour.
And I think it's also hasn't moved beyond the presenteeism culture that we've had for such a long time, and I totally understand why. You need people there when the shop is open. I get that, but it focused very much on being there rather than results, I think, sometimes. And again, it works for Primark, for such a successful company, but it just didn't work for me. I'm more interested in getting the end result than how we get there. Obviously, we have to do it in the right way. We have to do the right things, but actually, it's about working smarter, not harder. And that's very much, definitely. Learning new ways to do things, learning ways that are efficient and, helpful, and create a sense of good well-being and stress-free culture. I'm much more interested in that, and having that flexibility, because I fully believe in bringing your whole self to work. And that's where I come from, in sense of, I'm at such a senior level now that I have the ability to make those changes and to create the kind of workplace that, this is going to sound really bad, but create the kind of workplace that I wish that I'd had at 16.
Yeah. But that should absolutely be the aspiration, shouldn't it? In terms of, that, like you say, once you get to that senior position, that's where you're able to really affect change, and you're able to give that change that I'm sure a lot of people would like, in terms of kind of, I know I like that from kind of my current role in terms of flexibility. And I think, that is kind of the general direction of travel, isn't it? Coming out of what we've gone through in the wider kind of sense in the last 18 months or so. It is around well-being, it is around flexibility, it is about looking after ourselves ultimately. And I think you're only in the right place looking at that, kind of already, if you like. So just obviously kind of moving on to topic 3. So I'm very much in your hands now. It's wildcard time. So the floor is yours.
Oh, what's my biggest what if? I think generally, I guess one that was kind of out of my hands, and which is, obviously, you know that I'm not from the UK originally. I was born in Los Angeles, where my parents lived when I was born, and obviously they split up when I was really young, and we moved back to the UK. And it's a conversation I have with a lot of people, is, why are you still here? Why have you not got back to LA? Because it's LA. And the truth is that I don't do heat very well at all. I feel the heat much more than I feel the cold. But it is a lot of, what if we had stayed in LA and I'd grown up there? A, I wouldn't have this accent, and B, I'd probably be doing something completely different, and I'd probably be a completely different person, because I think there obviously is a sense of, you know, nature versus nurture to an extent, but your environment makes a massive change. You know, I went to school in Kingswood and, you know, worked at Primark with you, and, you know, that's kind of my growing up was here. And I look at my cousins in the States, and they're like, you know, their parents are British as well, but they stayed in LA. And it's kind of like, is that what my life would have looked like? Like, how different would it actually have been if you take that nature versus nurture thing? And yeah, I guess that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, and that's a huge one, isn't it? In terms of,
Yeah.
you think that kind of that action changes everything. Like you say, it led to your education. So for context, Kingswood is not a nice part of Bristol, particularly.
Fine.
For those that aren't aware.
As long as you don't go to Chaser, better than Yate anyway.
Yeah.
Come on.
But it like you say, it leads then to that domino effect, doesn't it? In terms of how you grow up, where you then end up working, accent, lifestyle, you know, career choice, all those things are based off that, aren't they? And you're right, it's not it could be completely different. And like you say, is there any aspiration from your side to kind of maybe go back there later in life? Do you think that you'll kind of naturally kind of go back there later because of kind of the experiences you've had so far? Obviously has led you to where you are, so you're happy here at the moment, but do you ever kind of see yourself maybe back there?
I don't know is the honest answer. There's been a lot of pressure over the years from my family to be like, you should move here, like, you should move here. But I wouldn't move to LA because I don't like the heat, and that is a big thing for me. Like, everyone's like, oh yeah, you say that now, but it's almost, you know, it's October now, it's going to get cold, and then you're going to be wanting it. Like, no, I genuinely do not do heat very well at all. I melt. I'm completely useless.
I'm fully with you, honestly. We went to Turkey a few years ago, and it was like in the 40 degrees kind of every day. Not a fan at all. It's just not my type of temperature. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I fully get it.
But I love it when it rains. Autumn's my favorite time of year. Like, I'm so happy that it's starting to cool down, and that is that's genuinely how I feel. I think if I were ever to move back to the States, I'd probably go to New York. My godmother lives in New York, and it is probably my favorite place on the planet. I know it's not for everybody, but I love fast-paced city life. I loved living in London, and I love living in Bristol. So New York would probably be sort of the place that I would potentially look to. And also, it's only like a 5-hour flight. It's not the end of the world.
No.
But I just don't know. I guess it would depend on the opportunity, or, you know, what the reason would be for a change. Because at the moment, I'm fairly settled and I'm fairly happy with what I'm doing. So there would need to be a reason other than I'm bored, I'm going to move to America. Also, my politics and American politics are a bit so.
And I think, I guess, in terms of that, you know, taking into, like you say, taking into consideration kind of work, maybe in terms of, you know, you're really happy with what you're doing now. That's becoming a bit looser, isn't it? In terms of a lot more people are working from kind of anywhere. I guess I know certainly in my organisation, people are kind of working all over the place in terms of working abroad and stuff, being able to work remotely. So that might help in terms of kind of going for, it's just the heat, isn't it? By the signs of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't mind, because New York obviously gets very hot in the summer, but then it gets really cold in the winter, and it has proper seasons. And I think that's my, you know, in LA it's hot all the time. I normally visit over New Year's, and it's still like 25 degrees, 26 degrees, t-shirt and shorts weather. They're walking around in coats going, oh, it's cold. Like,
no, it's not.
Really not cold. It's not cold. So, but yeah, so
that's a great one. That's a really interesting, like you say, just to kind of think about the ripple effect of that, and kind of how that shapes everything, doesn't it? When you think about it, location is a big part of who we become, what we do. it forms so much, like you say. So that's a really good wildcard one. Yeah, just thank you, I guess, in terms of thanks for coming on.
No, right, thanks for having me.
You want to just plug your shops again in terms of kind of remind everyone where they are?
Come to Better Food. So we are an organic, local, ethical, essentially supermarket. I don't really like the word supermarket, but it is the best way to describe it. Sorry, my cat's just decided to go mad and scratch the sofa. So we have 3 stops in central Bristol, about to open our 4th. And it's all very much about, how can we create a space that provides everything that people would need, with having all the options be ethical or local or organic, and making sure that people can make those decisions for themselves and make the right decision, but also be able to get everything in one place. So
That's great. Thank you again.